Killers of the Flower Moon is written and directed by Martin Scorsese, and it stars Lily Gladstone, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Robert De Niro. There is a lot of hype surrounding this movie. It's received excellent reviews, it's telling a story that not many people knew about, and it's a passion project for Martin Scorsese. So needless to say, this is a highly anticipated and highly hyped up movie. Now, is it as good as people are saying? While I don't think the film's perfect, there's certainly a ton of positives to talk about, so let me start with those. This film tells the story of the Osage people who suffered countless tragedies in a very short period of time due to different families looking to get rich through inheritances. And when I say tragedies, I mean some really fucked up shit. This was apparently a story that Martin Scorsese was very passionate about telling, and a movie that he was trying to get made for over a decade. He had a really nice little speech he gave before the movie started talking about how this was a passion project for him, and I think that adds a lot to the film, especially if you care about film at all. What was really fascinating to me before getting into any of the technicals about the movie was just the fact that I had never heard about this tragedy or this series of events happening ever. Not once in any textbooks in school, not once just from word of mouth or anything like that. This was completely news to me, and it kind of shows you how many little pockets of history there are that we don't know about that are just really messed up. And I'm sure for any Osage people, this is a huge relief to see this whole story brought to the screen in such an elegant way. From what I've read, this is a very accurate retelling of the series of events as they happen in real life. But not only is it accurate, I also think it's this movie's biggest strength. This story is not told through the eyes of a hero or protagonist. Leonardo DiCaprio is our main character, but we're looking at him and the things happening in the world from the perspective of the Osage people, and I thought this added a lot of strength to the storytelling. Just like we've come to expect from Martin Scorsese, this provides such a balanced perspective from both sides. The Osage people are obviously victimized by these families doing this, but then we also get this very intricate perspective from Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro's characters, who are the ones victimizing these people essentially. And it provided such a deeply disturbing perspective of how this could be rationalized by one side and be such a horrific tragedy on the other. It's such a terrible thing, but it's such an encapsulation of human nature and how it could repeat itself. Now, with that said, this presents a massive challenge to Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro's characters, but especially DiCaprio here, because he has to be on screen for pretty much the whole movie. We're not really supposed to like him. We don't like the things he's doing, but for some reason, we want to keep following his character because his performance has so much depth to it. From the beginning of the film, he's talking to De Niro over dinner, really casually how they could make more money, and they kind of slip into some really messed up conversations and ways to make money, things that are sort of implied, but it's the way that it so naturally is brought up and the way that his character just kind of falls into these things. It can show you how it could seem rational to them and like not a terrible thing to do somehow, but then once it's brought to light, everything changes. And of course, I'm being general here. I'm not trying to spoil things or go in depth at all. But with that said, DiCaprio absolutely delivered an incredible performance. He chewed the whole thing up, and I just thought he did a great job being very captivating despite being highly unlikable. Lily Gladstone also was a massive standout in this film. She's one of the Osage sisters that have a lot of stuff going on, and I'll just say a lot of involvement in this whole thing. There's a lot that happens between her and DiCaprio's character, and she brought so much to the film. She was an absolute standout without a doubt. I'm excited to see her in more films going forward. She was absolutely awesome in this movie. And it's especially exciting to talk about that because it's kind of radio kill at this point to say, oh, De Niro and DiCaprio gave incredible performance in a Scorsese movie. Of course they did. But Lily Gladstone was a standout. She really was. Amongst giants, she stood out. So that's pretty much the biggest compliment I can give. And once again, it almost goes without saying, but the cinematography was absolutely incredible. The editing was also noticeably good in this film. But despite this passion project that Scorsese has put together and incredible, memorable performances, beautiful cinematography, despite all of those things, this film fell flat for me in a lot of ways. And I'm really disappointed to say this, but I felt the runtime. I really did. And I know a lot of reviewers out there are talking about how this movie actually felt short for them. For me, it felt like a 3.5-hour movie because that's what it was. I had to pee through the entire thing, so that didn't help. But on top of that, I just really felt like the pacing was a little bit too slow for the runtime. I didn't think the runtime was justified either. For people that were so incredibly captivated by this film that it flew for you, obviously that's awesome. That's exactly how I felt for Oppenheimer, for The Batman, for any of these really long films we've gotten recently. I've been a huge fan of. Unfortunately for this film, for me, I don't see how the runtime can be justified. I would be hard pressed to tell you why it needed to be that long. There is a lot of fluff here that could be cut out, I believe, a good 30 minutes at least. But to be fair to the film, I didn't mind it was that long. I didn't mind that it felt like 3.5 hours. The movie was just so gorgeous and captivating enough that I was enjoying myself. So it wasn't like I was dying to leave or I was bored out of my mind. I just didn't think it needed to be that long, unlike some of the other films that have come out, like Oppenheimer and The Batman, where I felt like it was completely justified and I wouldn't have changed a thing. I also felt like the way the story was constructed felt a little bit discombobulated at times. There were details that could have been taken out or at least moved. The editing is so phenomenal and the cinematography is so beautiful that I think sometimes we give movies like this the pass because we're not minding the fact that it feels a little bit wayward at times. We're just enjoying the ride and the beautiful story that's being told. That's exactly how I felt. But as a reviewer, I have to think of it that way. And to be honest with you, there were a lot of times where I'm thinking, why is the story being told in this order? Why is this character off screen for this long and then popping up again here? And I'm supposed to remember what their significance was. I just felt like this movie felt much more scatterbrained than the usual Scorsese film. If you go back and watch The Irishman, Goodfellas, Casino, they all feel very cohesive. You can't take your eyes off the screen for most of the movie. I didn't feel that way with this film at all, and I really enjoyed it, but it did not have that intensity, that captivating narrative that just chugs along. I felt like it kind of flowed around a little bit for 3.5 hours, and it was a fun ride, but it wasn't a perfect one. Just to kind of pull my thoughts together here, I really enjoyed the plot line. I thought this was a really important piece of history that I had never even heard about. I'm really glad that this story was being told. It's also amazing that this was a passion project for Scorsese, something he's wanted to tell for a really long time. I absolutely implore you to go to the theater and see it, even though you may feel the runtime. I think there's a lot of people out there that will. It is worth going. It's so beautiful. It's such a better experience in the theater. I can't recommend it enough. If you're a fan of his other films, like his gangster movies, don't expect the exact same thing here, but tonally and in a variety of ways, it's very similar. So you're gonna get the Scorsese trademark with this film. It's just gonna be a little bit different, so expect a little bit more of a slow burn here. Anyway, guys, thank you as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, guys, see ya.